Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I am back with some more freedom. Today we're going to be going over the amendments to the Constitution of the United States of America. We are continuing our energetic investment into our country, even though it does appear after yesterday, May the 30th, that maybe things are still not going quite as right as I thought that they would be. That's okay. We're going to continue to invest our energy into the right thing, the things that we should stand for, the things that this country should stand for, truth, justice, and the American way, even though they have been subverted and are definitely under attack, does not mean that we should not still stand for them and should not still understand exactly what is going on. So let's dive in and check out the amendments to the Constitution of the United States of America. The First Amendment: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the rights of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So, what's the First Amendment? The First Amendment means that you can freely do whatever the fuck you want to do. You can say the things that you want to say. Nobody can tell you no. You can use racial slurs. You can use harsh language. You can call people all of the things that will get you banned on social media. You have the absolute right to say anything that you want. You have the absolute right to follow whatever religion you want, and the government cannot tell you no. They cannot tell you you must follow our religion. That doesn't mean that your peers have to accept you. It doesn't. It means that you get to freely exercise them, but you do not get to push them on anyone else. It doesn't mean that we have to agree with you. It means that you get to do the thing that you want to do, and that is, after all, the most important part of freedom. You also have the right, or the press has the right to report things, whether or not they're true. It is up to you as an informed electorate to understand that the press does lie to you, that they are absolutely a propaganda arm of the government now, but they have always been propaganda dispensers ever since the beginning of the beginning. We read through the Federalist Papers, that was propaganda. Doesn't mean that it's bad. Propaganda is the thing to help you gain political advantage. And so, in order to gain political advantage over the people who dissented against the Constitution, there was 85 letters written and published in the newspapers. There was more, but we have 85 that we follow, that we understand to be the reason why we have the Constitution. And we also have the right to peaceably assemble and to address the government for a redress of grievances. That means that if you don't think the government is going correctly, you can say it loudly and proudly. You can say Joe Biden is a piece of shit, that the entire Biden organization is corrupt beyond all recompense. There is no reconciliation with people who will not follow the law. Which leads us directly into the next one. The Second Amendment: a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is another rather simple one. You have the right to have whatever arms that you feel should be necessary to protect you from an overbearing and overreaching government, or from foreign invasion, or from domestic insurrection. You should be able at any point in time to come to the defense of your country in the manner that is necessary with the absolute best, the weapons of war that are most likely to achieve success for the freedom-loving people that we are. You should be able to have Patriot missiles. You should be able to have an Abrams tank. You should be able to have a helicopter on your roof, parked in your yard. You should be able to have attack jets and warships. All of these things were fully intended to be at your disposal. You should be able to mail order guns and weapons, like any weapon you want, whether it's fully automatic, semi-automatic, or whether it's a lever action. Whatever it happens to be, you should be able to get it. If it's a missile, if it's a grenade, if it's a rocket launcher, no matter what it is, you should be able to get it according to this. Because the people are the militia. You don't have to be in the militia and organized. Well regulated means well prepared. It means that you have all of the guns and ammunition that you would need to successfully complete the mission. That's what well regulated means. Being necessary to the security of a free state means that they can call you up at any time if you are so equipped so that you can defend your country. If we wake up one morning and there are parachutes falling out of the sky and they're all blue, you should be able to pop them off. You should be able to have the means to take that threat and handle it. The Third Amendment. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner prescribed by law. You have the right to your household. Back in the day when this was enacted, it was common practice to take people's houses. You need to house your troops here? Okay, well, y'all have to sleep in the yard. The troops are going to sleep in your house. That is a real thing. Sometimes you got to sleep in the living room, right? Sometimes you got to sleep in the spare room, but your place gets taken. And this makes it where that cannot happen. And we don't really have a problem with that now. We have barracks all over the country. If we need to garrison our troops, there are plenty of places, and we do not have the quartering problem. But a lot of that is because we have the Third Amendment. The Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched, and the person or things to be seized. All of these drug stops on the road, completely illegal. You have the right to reasonably expect, unless you are violating some kind of law where it gives them a reasonable reason to search. That's not speeding. That's not an inspection sticker, right? Or a brake tag, whatever you happen to call it where you are, or your registration out on your car. Those things should not be, right? You can get a violation for them. They can write you a ticket, but they shouldn't be able to search your car for that. They shouldn't be able to search their car because they smell something. The unreasonable part of this is that you have the expectation of privacy in yourself wherever you happen to be. You are sovereign. You are indeed your own person who can do your own things, that you are endowed by your Creator with the right to be able to travel freely without harassment or persecution for not doing things that are violent against other people. That's what this is supposed to be for, right? We have a severe justice problem in this country. The Fifth Amendment. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on the presentiment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. And again, this is a big one that gets violated every single day. Whenever they go and they make a drug bust and they take somebody's car, when they go and they take somebody's house, well, that's drug funds. I don't care. I don't give two shits. It is not just. It is against the Fifth Amendment for police departments to seize property that is not directly related to the incident involved. Well, they were driving the car and they had drugs in them. So what? It's still their fucking property. You don't get to take it. It is their property. Drug laws are, by and large, unconstitutional in and of themselves. And so to seize someone's property because they have some marijuana is a big, big, big problem. And it should be handled in a sovereign way. But we don't do that. You don't have you don't have to speak against yourself, which was not always a thing. People tend to forget the reason that we have that in here is because once upon a time you could be compelled to talk against yourself, but that is no longer a thing. You cannot be brought to trial without a grand jury, but our grand jury system is completely fucked. Like, completely. And if you don't believe that, you should take a look at New York. You don't even have to have evidence to bring somebody up on the trial. That is insanity. It has always been that the prosecutor has total sway in the grand jury. There is no exculpatory evidence to be presented. There is no defense allowed in the grand jury, right? It is a presentation of fact. But it can be select facts. It doesn't have to be all the facts, and we see that all the time, most especially in New York here very recently. Nor shall be compelled in a criminal case to be a witness against himself or be deprived of life, liberty, or property. And again, that is another big problem because January the 6th is a thing. And people who walked between the ropes after being waved in by cops are still today, 4 years later, still sitting in jail without charges for a lot of them, without a fair and just trial for most of them. Almost nobody has gone through the judicial process, and yet they are still sitting in solitary confinement, being deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process of law. That is another thing that we should be handling sovereignly, but we're not because we don't do those things. The Sixth Amendment. We're about to hit it again. In all criminal persecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. You are allowed constitutionally by the right of God himself to defend yourself. That doesn't mean by violence. But if you are being placed under a gag order by an unjust law officer, you have the right to disobey that. An impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime had been committed. There was no crime committed in New York, and yet we have 34 charges brought and sustained against a man without clear definition of the charges. No clear definition of the charges. There is no crime described. Nothing happened. And yet, you have the right to defend yourself. You have the right to produce contravening evidence. And if a judge tells you otherwise, then we have a problem with the judge. And that should be handled sovereignly. But we don't do that no more. So, Seventh Amendment. In suits at common law where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according with the rules of common law. Now, $20 has been adjusted, but back then it was fairly compensatory to where it is now. The right of a trial by jury shall be preserved. You have the right to an impartial jury. There was no impartial jury in New York. I don't care what your arguments are. Well, Trump's team agreed to it. They had no fucking choice. There's no option other than the corruption. I don't live in New York. I am a very, very long way away from there. But if you are a patriot who lives in New York, I do not know how you can stand yourself today. The Eighth Amendment. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. We again have clear violations of this one. If you don't believe that, ask Alex Jones. Alex Jones said some stupid shit. He did. It was really stupid to say the things he did. Even if he believed them, it was dumb to say them. You have the right to say them, but it didn't change anything, did it? Now, I don't believe the things he said at all. I do believe that there was a setup there. I'm not going to lie about that one. But I believe that people died. Absolutely. They have no problem killing you. There was something intentional that happened that Alex was talking about that he was not completely incorrect about, but he went about the wrong way. And excessive fines and penalties have been placed upon him with the sole purpose of destroying the man, both personally and professionally. That is a problem. We have the exact same situation with the January 6th detainees. The exact same problem. Excessive fines imposed, excessive bail required. We have the same problem with an ex-president of the United States with excessive bail being set. And then they tried to argue that cash was not good enough, that cash on deposit was not good enough, despite the fact that the cash actually being deposited was excessive and in violation of the Eighth Amendment. We have a problem that we should be handling sovereignly, but we don't do that no more. The Ninth Amendment. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. This is to say that everything that is not listed out, that you have is yours. It is given to you by God. It is not given to you by the state. And just because it is not listed does not mean it is not there. That's the right to privacy that is getting violated every fucking day. That our NSA and our DEA and our FBI and our CIA and all of these three-letter agencies, all of them are violating your Ninth Amendment rights every single day. Every time that there is a warrantless search, it violates two. Every time that they scrape the data off of phones, it violates this one. You have the right to privacy. It may not be an enumerated right, but you have the perfect expectation to be private in your person. That is part of your unreasonable searches and seizures that we just talked about. You have the right to be private, and this is violated every single day. Your government has been in collusion with big tech firms to get your information, to spy on you. And your Ninth Amendment rights are being violated every day. This should be handled sovereignly, but we don't do that anymore. The 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. And again, here we are. There's a whole lot of people out there trying to get Roe versus Wade put back into place. That never should have been allowed to happen. That was unconstitutional all the way back when it started. It has always been and always will be a states' right issue. That's why the judges kicked it back. That's why everybody's all pissed off about it. If you don't like your state, move. That is the purpose of having the states. It is not the purpose of the states to tell, or the federal government to tell you anything outside of tariffs, outside of treaties and trade agreements, outside of securing the borders and providing for the militia so that there is safety on our soil. That is the full extent of what the government is for. The government is only to protect your rights. That is the full scope of the United States American government. It is to protect your rights, not Ukraine's rights, not Israel's rights, not Palestinian rights, not Russian rights, nobody's rights but the American people. This is our government, established for us to ensure our liberties that are granted to us by the Creator, not by government. You are not given anything by these. All of these have always been yours. This should be handled sovereignly, but we don't do that anymore. The 11th Amendment. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state, or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. Shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced and prosecuted against one of the United States. Okay, so this is dealing with state versus citizens, right? Or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. Now, the judicial power of the federal government is only to deal with states. Right? It is not meant, with very few exceptions, to deal with individuals. You should not have to take this court case from New York all the way. Right? It shouldn't have to, but it will. It should, as it is supposed to be merely the arbitrator between states. It is the last bastion of hope for those who are unfairly persecuted. And so we have to hope that they do pick it up, right? It deals with federal issues, so even then it is probably within their jurisdiction. But like the government is to guarantee your rights against encroachment, so is the judicial department. It is supposed to be entirely to protect you against overbearing states and against an overbearing federal government. It's not meant to be on a federal level about you, between you and me, right? Two people, or necessarily between a citizen and another state. The 12th Amendment. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom, at least, shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name on their ballots the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots the person voted for as vice president. And they shall make a distinct list of all persons voted for as president and all persons voted for as vice president, and of the number of votes for each, which lists they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, open all of the certificates, and votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. If no person have such a majority, then from the persons having the highest numbers, not exceeding 3 on the list of those voted for as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president. But in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum for this shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states, and a majority of all the states shall be necessary to a choice. And if the House of Representatives shall not choose a president, whenever the right of choice shall devolve upon them, before the 4th day of March next following, then the vice president shall act as president, as in the case of death or other constitutional disability of the president. The person having the greatest number of votes as vice president shall be the vice president, if such a number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if no person have a majority, then from the 2 highest numbers on the list the Senate shall choose the vice president. A quorum for the purpose shall consist of 2/3 of the whole number of senators, and a majority of the whole number shall be necessary to a choice. But no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States. Now this one has changed significantly over the years, right? We don't elect in the same manner that we did. Once upon a time, we only voted for congressmen, right? Or House of Representatives. The Senate was voted for by the House of Representatives, and then the Senate had the power to pick the vice president in a case of a tie, or the Congress has the power to pick the president in the case of a tie, and I don't believe that has happened. I haven't done the research, so I could be wrong about it, but there has been a case when it should have. We have a problem that is completely separate from this, right? We have a problem with election integrity, and I know that's probably going to get that little flag underneath the thing, but if at any point in time all the parties involved in the ballot are not allowed to observe the counting of the ballots, then those ballots should be dismissed completely and totally. The entire district thrown out. If even for 10 minutes, a minute, 5 minutes, you're not allowed to see clearly and distinctly all of the ballots, and to ensure that the ballots going in are actually the ballots that are intended to go in, that is a problem. It should be handled sovereignly, but we don't do that anymore. The 13th Amendment. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. In Section 2, Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. It was the intention of a great number of the original founders to get rid of slavery. They compromised and kept it around for a while, and then eventually we got rid of it. Now, this was caused by conflict, right? We had to go and give reparations in blood. That is the only reparations that will ever be paid out here in the States. It was paid in full, in blood. People fought and died so that people could be free. That is a thing. It is true. It is real. And it happened. And that is your reparations, and the only ones that you will ever get. The state of Louisiana. Interesting side note, right? We have this clause in our state constitution, and they just recently tried to change it. So they were going to change neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, into in the pursuit of justice. That's what they were trying to do. You could be involuntary servituded or slaveried for the pursuit of justice, no conviction, no due process, no court of law. In the pursuit of justice, they could involuntary servitude you. That is exactly what the Democratic Party in the state of Louisiana tried to get a constitutional amendment to say. I wonder why. That should be handled sovereignly, but we don't do that anymore. The 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any laws which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. I bet old Marvin Heemeyer's got a problem with that, huh? He was denied life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness without due process of law. Then he made a killdozer. He handled it sovereignly. Well, we don't do that anymore. Representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for President and Vice President of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, or the members of the legislature thereof, is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state, being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged except for participation in rebellion or other crime, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state. No person shall be senator or representative in Congress, or elector of president or vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may have a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such a disability. This is one that has been weaponized. They attempted very hard to throw this word, insurrection, and make it stick. It has caused several violations of our Constitution in several different ways, not the least of which is Section 3 right here that we are reading. The president, at the time, said to go home. He said, if you wish to express yourself, do so peacefully and remain peaceful. And yet, they somehow construed that into violence because they wanted to construe that into violence. And now we have violations. We should be handling it sovereignly, but we don't do that anymore. The validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned. But neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claims for the loss or emancipation of any slave, but all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. And here, this is why you're not getting any reparations. Now, besides the fact that it's paid in blood, right? It is constitutionally in here that you're not going to get reparations. You would have to change the Constitution, and you're not going to do that. It's not going to happen. It will not happen. I don't care if you get the convention together or not. There will not be enough support for it. It's just not going to happen. And Section 5, the Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. The 15th Amendment. The right of the citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. And the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So you are not to be denied, right? This one's fairly self-evident. You should have the right to vote. According to race and color, this was before women's suffrage, so they didn't add in the sex yet, but the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. Taxes are not illegal. It is not theft. The misappropriation, the misuse of taxes, you can be pissed off about that, but you cannot be pissed off because we need them to have civilization. If you are pissed off because we have taxes, you are a problem. You are a child who cannot reason. I know, I talked about it many times, but if it was like the main argument, right, the heart of the argument is, well, you can build your own roads, but you won't. I have given the example before, but I will give it again. ExxonMobil here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, has the most extensive private roadway in the state. They have several miles within the compound, and none of them are in good condition. It serves no one but them to make them more efficient and more safe, and they do not. They are one of the wealthiest companies on the planet, and they don't fix their own potholes. You won't either. And if you do, your neighbor won't, and you'll be mad about that. Do we have waste? Absolutely. Do we need to, as an informed electorate, make sure that that gets taken care of? Absolutely. We should be handling that sovereignly, but we don't do that anymore. The 17th Amendment. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislatures. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies, provided that legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election, as the legislature may direct. This amendment shall not be so construed as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it comes valid as a part of the Constitution. This is where we changed how we elect our senators, and I do agree with it. I don't believe that it should be left up. Now, I believe that we should change the age requirements. I talked about that yesterday, but we live longer. We are less mature at a younger age than we used to be. And so we should probably increase the ages for service. But other than that, I am perfectly fine with the people being able to choose their own senators without having somebody else step in the middle. The 18th Amendment. After 1 year from the ratification of this article, the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors within, the importation thereof into, or the exportation thereof from the United States and all territories subject to the jurisdiction thereof for beverage purposes is hereby prohibited. The Congress and the several states shall have concurrent power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of the several states, as provided in the Constitution, within 7 years from the date of the submission hereof to the United States. And here we have a clear example of how we do not get it right every time. Our process is long. It is arduous for a reason, and it is so that we will not try to regulate morality. Right? There are absolutely moral stances that we need to take. You are not allowed to kill people, whether they are born or not. You are not allowed to steal other people's property. right? You are not allowed to aggress upon other people. Those are all real things, right? But you can drink if you want to. You can smoke if you want to. You can do dope if you want to. It is remarkably a dumb idea. But you get the freedom to make dumb ideas. This was an attempt to control, the unequivocal, absolutely without any doubt. It was the attempt to control the populace for no good reason other than I think what you are doing is wrong, and that is absolutely antithetical to what we as a people are supposed to stand for. So this amendment right here shows us that we do not get it right all the time. That we should take a little bit extra care before we try to amend our Constitution into ways that we don't know about. We don't know the ramifications. The amount of crime that came from this particular one, the amount of deaths that came from this, and that's not even counting the people shot. The federal government would poison alcohol so that people who drank the alcohol would get sick and die because they thought that it was immoral for you to drink. That's a problem. That's a major problem. That should have been handled sovereignly. The 19th Amendment. The right of the citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. This is where they added in the sex part from to the race and stuff. It is absolutely a good thing for the most part, probably, kind of. I don't know. Maybe that was another one we may have thought about. Now, I'm all for equal rights. Don't get me wrong. That was a little bit of a joke, but there are some serious people out there making the argument that maybe we need to repeal the 19th. And if you look at the results of elections and who votes there and how uninformed they are as a whole, maybe. The 20th Amendment. The terms of President and Vice President shall end at noon on the 20th day of January, and the terms of Senators and Representatives at noon on the 3rd day of January, of the years in which such terms would have ended if this article had not been ratified, and the terms of their successors shall then begin. The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meetings shall begin at noon on the 3rd day of January unless they shall by law appoint a different day. Section 3. If at the time fixed for the beginning of the term of President, the President-elect shall have died, the Vice President-elect shall become President. If a President shall not have chosen before the time fixed for the beginning of his term, or if the President-elect shall have failed to qualify, then the Vice President-elect shall act as President until a President shall have qualified. And the Congress may, by law, provide for the case wherein neither a President-elect nor a Vice President-elect shall have qualified, declaring who shall then act as President, or the manner in which one who is to act shall be selected. And such person shall act accordingly until a President or Vice President shall have qualified. Section 4. The Congress may by law provide for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the House of Representatives may choose a President, whenever the right choice shall have devolved upon them, and for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the Senate may choose a Vice President, whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them. Section 5. Sections 1 and 2 shall take effect on the 15th day of October following the ratification of this article. Section 6. The article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission. This is one that was just clearing up some of the inconsistencies, right? So there's not a whole lot to extrapolate on it. I'm not going to bother trying to. The 21st Amendment. The 18th article of amendment to the Constitution of the United States is hereby repealed. Section 2. The transportation or importation into any state, territory, or possession of the United States for delivery or use therein of intoxicating liquors in violation of the laws thereof is hereby prohibited. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by conventions in the several states, as provided in the Constitution, within 7 years from the date of the submission hereof to the states by the Congress. And this was taking away the travesty that was, right? The The moralization argument died here. Should have died here. Probably hasn't died here. Absolutely did not die here. But again, that is something that we should have handled sovereignly and we don't do anymore. The 22nd Amendment. Section 1. No person shall be elected to the office of the President more than twice, and no person who has held the office of President, or acted as President, for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected President, shall be elected to the office of President more than once. But this article shall not apply to any persons holding the office of President when the article was proposed by the Congress, and shall not prevent any person who may be holding the office of President or acting as President during the term within which this article becomes operative from holding the office of President or acting as President during the remainder of such term. This was put in because of Roosevelt destroying our nation. The article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment by the Constitution within the legislature of 3/4 of the several states by 7 years from the date of its submission to the states by the Congress. The 23rd Amendment, Section 1. The district constituting the seat of government of the United States shall appoint in such manner as the Congress may direct a number of electors, the President and Vice President, equal to the whole number of senators and representatives in Congress to which the district would be entitled if it were a state, but in no event more than the least populous state. They shall be in addition to those appointed by the states, but they shall be considered for the purposes of the election of the President and Vice President to be electors appointed by a state, and they shall meet in the district and perform such duties as provided by the 12th article of amendment. And here I have a little bit of a different opinion, but it's just me as a sovereign person. I don't think that that should be a thing. I think that Washington, D.C. was excluded from being part of the sovereign country. It is not a state, it was a territory for a reason. I don't believe anybody should be allowed to live there outside of direct service. And by direct service, I mean the President, the Vice President, and those who are appointed to the top levels of the cabinet. And they should retain fully their voting rights in their respective states, and their electors should come from there. All of the office staff, all of the various people who live in D.C. should not be able to. It should be completely inviolable. It should be a territory separate from residential distress. Like, you should not be able to live in D.C. You can live in Virginia, you can live in South Carolina, you can live in all the places around it, Maryland, but you shouldn't be able to live in D.C. You shouldn't have electors from D.C. They are not a state. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. The 24th Amendment, Section 1. The right of the citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for President or Vice President, for electors for President or Vice President, or for Senator or Representative in Congress, shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state by reason of failure to pay any poll tax or other tax. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. And this was to keep people from racially discriminating, and I am fully on board with it. You should have to take a test to be able to vote. You should be able to go to an office that is directly for it and take a test that certifies you as having understanding of civics. Like, that should be the requirement. You should absolutely understand not even the issues of the day, but simply how things work. You should know what legislators do. You should know what senators do. You should know the difference between the two. You should know what the judicial branch is and where its responsibilities lie and where your responsibilities lie in accordance with it, because you have some. There should be a test, but it should not be restrictive. You shouldn't have to pay for it. It should be a free test with a freely issued ID that allows you to vote. That should be our constitutional amendment. The 25th Amendment. In the case of the removal of the President from office or of his death or resignation, the Vice President shall become President. Section 2. Whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the Vice President, the President shall nominate a Vice President, who shall take office upon confirmation by a majority vote of both houses of Congress. Section 3. Whenever the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, and until he transmits to them a written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the Vice President acting President. Whenever the Vice President and a majority of either of the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting President. Thereafter, when the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office, unless the Vice President and a majority of either of the principal officers of the executive department or of such other body as Congress may by law provide transmit within 4 days to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Thereupon Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for that purpose, if not in session. If the Congress, within 21 days after receipt of the latter written declaration, or if Congress is not in session within 21 days after Congress is required to assemble, determines by 2/3 vote of both houses that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall continue to discharge the same as acting President. Otherwise, the President shall resume the powers and duties of his office. The 25th Amendment is a big one. It allows for us to remove somebody who is imbecilic or incompetent. We may not be using it, but it is there. We have a president currently who cannot string together 2 sentences in a row. That is a truth. You don't have to like it. We have another president they were trying desperately to find any reason to use this on him and couldn't. So they're prosecuting him unjustly. I don't care if you don't like that. It is truth. And we currently have a president that party is represented by. The party that was trying everything that they could possibly throw at him to get the 25th Amendment against President Donald Trump is the same people who are propping up this guy, or several guys, because you don't go from having a bald chin to having no bald chin. You don't go from having detached earlobes to having attached earlobes. You don't go from your eyes canting upward to canting downward. That just doesn't happen in real life. So there's probably more than one of them. And they know it. They know that he is incapable. They know that he cannot discharge his duties. And yet, here we are. This is a safety check. This is a valve that has been tried to be used wrong and will not be used correctly. What do we do about that? The 26th Amendment. We have a problem where fully half of this country is intending to vote for a man who cannot speak and say that about the other side. Now, I know you can call me a hypocrite for that because Trump has stumbled over his words. There has been like 4 instances in the last 8 years where he had a little bit of tongue-tied. But we have another guy who could not put together a 13-second clip without 9 edits. Keep that in mind. The 26th Amendment. The right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of age. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. And here's one that I, again, have some problems with. At 18, you are able to go fight for your country, so you should be able to vote. But you can't go buy a beer, so you shouldn't be able to vote. You shouldn't be able to fight for your country if you can't buy a beer. You shouldn't be able to fight for your country if you can't buy a beer. Right? If you are not considered responsible enough at 18 years old to buy your own alcohol. Like when I was a kid, I could. right? When I was 18, it was legal in my state, not all the rest of them, but in mine. And so we didn't have as many problems with the underage drinking, believe it or not. Now, if you have decided that a person cannot be responsible enough to imbibe alcohol until they are 21 years of age, then you should decide that they cannot vote until they are 21 years of age. That was the old number. 21 was the old cutoff. Why did they change it, do you think? Do you think it was because they needed the youth vote in order to get Democrats? Because the youth tend to be uneducated. That is a truth. That is a real thing. Most of the people who vote for the Democratic Party, and I'm really not trying to be as partisan as I am winding up on this one, but most of the people who vote for the Democratic Party have no clue. They live life in bliss and ignorance, and that is truth, and you don't have to like it. The 27th Amendment. No law varying the compensation for the services of senators and representatives shall take effect until an election of representatives shall have intervened. This was talked about extensively in the Federalist Papers, but apparently we did need to put an amendment in there for it, and so it is. That you can't say, oh, you're serving in Congress, I don't like what you're doing, I'm going to cut your pay. That's what this is. I know that I got a lot more partisan than I tend to. I try to stay in the middle because I really am an in the middle guy. I don't like the D's or the R's, and that is a real thing too. I don't like most of the Republican Party, and I abhor almost the entirety of the Democratic Party. They are wings on the same bird, but that bird is corrupt. We have a few good people in there trying to do the right thing, but not many. Most of them are career politicians who are not. That is our problem. It's not a problem for term limits. People keep calling for term limits, and that's dumb. You have people who do good things, and they should be able to serve more than twice. I understand why they did it for the presidency, but that is a unique situation. It is a powerful position with a lot of influence. More influence than it was intended to have, as a matter of fact. But I understand that one. I don't understand the rest of them, right? We have severe problems here that can only be solved by an informed electorate, by us as citizens of the United States taking responsibility for our own sovereignty and our own direction. You are a sovereign citizen. Almost everyone, there are people who are exceptions, but almost everyone has chosen to take part in the society. We have obligations to ourselves and others as citizens in the society to ensure that everything in these papers is held to account. All of the things which are in here held inviolable, we need to ensure that is so. We have a problem where we do not step up. We do not handle things the way they should have been. There was a time in this country where we tarred and feathered people who did the wrong thing. There was a president, right? The 16th president of the United States, who would beat his opponents with a stick until they gave up. He was a terrible person, and we revere him for it. We are a nation of rebels. We are a nation of sovereign people who want to do their own thing. You have the right to be ignorant. It is remarkably stupid to do so, but you have the right to do it. You don't have to be informed. But if you choose not to be informed, you should choose not to take part of the process. If you're not going to take the time to understand where you stand and why you stand there and why you should stand there, then you shouldn't be involved. And that's not to take away from you. If you want to be involved, get educated. It is simple. I'm not saying that you have to have my beliefs. You can believe completely opposite of me as long as you actually understand the facts of the matter and actually understand where you stand on the matter. If you are for democracy, then you are against the republic. Those two are not interminglable. We use democratic processes, yes, but we are not a democracy. We have severe checks to keep us out of a democracy, because a democracy is terrible. It is the last step before tyranny every single time. And so we have to fight against it. We have to keep the republic. We have to keep our electoral system. We have to keep this system because it is the best one. Does that mean it is the best possible? No. Does it mean there's room for improvement? Absolutely. But we're not going to improve it by not being informed. We're not going to improve it by not being involved. We're not going to be better as a country by allowing the wrong things to happen. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a not too difficult topic. It should be fairly self-evident why we have all of these. It should be fairly self-evident what they all mean, but it's not. There will people who tell you you can't have a gun unless you're in a militia. That's stupid. You're completely uninformed. You have no clue from what you speak. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. Pitt loves God loves you. And you are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. This has been Pitt's Take. I was about to say it's been Pitt's Take before I got through the rest of it.